Is St. Michael Albertville School District and the STMA Legislative Action Team, we would like to extend a warm welcome to students, staff, school board members, families, community members, and visitors from other districts for joining us this evening. We would also like to welcome legislators and their staff who are here with us this evening. We are grateful to all of you for your advocacy and for your continued support of students and staff. Technology glitch already. All right, here we go. So I'd like to start by reviewing the agenda. We'll start by providing some basic information about school funding and the impact that the 2023 legislative session had on our school district and others. We have a number of speakers who will share their stories with us, and then we have time set aside for a question and answer with legislators. To be respectful of our legislators' time and to get our students and staff home so they're ready to teach and learn in the morning, we have set aside 1 hour for the forum. To start off with, I'm going to show a brief video, it's about 5 minutes long, on school funding. The numbers in this video are from last year, so they may be slightly different than what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes.
At STMA, we are committed to students first. Every day, we work hard to practice these values while providing our taxpayers with a solid return on investment. Our continuing success as a district is a product of our students, their families, our staff, and our generous community, which is why we want you to be informed. Our ability to continue to provide exceptional educational opportunities and retain quality staff is partially a product of adequate funding. And the one area where STMA is falling further behind is the amount of student funding we receive from our state legislators. You see, when it comes to funding public schools in Minnesota, all children and taxpayers are not equal. Today, children in similar school districts throughout Minnesota receive vastly different sums of revenue based largely on where families choose to live. For example, the lowest funded school district in Minnesota receives approximately $9,300 annually, while the highest funded school district receives $19,000, more than twice as much. Minnesota's formula for funding public education remains grossly unfair to STMA kids and continues to punish families for where they choose to live. In fact, STMA currently ranks almost last among 327 school districts in the state. Yes, you heard that correctly. STMA is almost dead last. Our students receive close to the least amount of revenue in the state. In fact, some school districts very close and very similar to our own receive thousands more in state revenue each year. It is a policy that is hard to explain and to understand. To understand just how we got here, it is important to have a basic knowledge of how public schools are funded in Minnesota. First, it is important to know that close to 86% of the money STMA spends comes directly through the state's funding formula. Education spending is about 40% of the state's budget, but that money is not spread out evenly across Minnesota school districts. State legislators decide how much money will be spent. That money is allocated according to a complicated funding formula that gives vastly different amounts of money to each school district. First, a few basics. Every school district receives a basic amount of money for per pupil spending. For this year, that amount is $6,863 per pupil. The rest of the state money is distributed as categorical aid according to a complex formula. At STMA, for reasons that are no fault of the community or district, we do not qualify for much categorical aid. Categorical aid is somewhat arbitrary, and the exact reasons why some school districts qualify and other school districts do not is determined by our state legislators. In short, this means our school district receives thousands of dollars less than other school districts. Here is what each STMA student receives from the state, and here are examples of what other districts receive. If that was not enough, our local taxpayers actually pay more than taxpayers in other districts because raising school revenue through an operating levy is tied to the district's commercial property base. The STMA community is property poor, meaning there's little commercial and industrial development to expand the tax base, which causes the tax burden to fall heavily on residential homeowners. For an operating levy, STMA taxpayers pay significantly more than taxpayers just down the road who reside in a property-rich community with lots of commercial and industrial development. For example, for the same levy amount, here is what STMA taxpayers pay, and here are examples of what taxpayers in other districts pay. What does this all mean? In order for us to maintain our tradition of excellence, we need an equitable funding system that is not based on where families choose to live. Minnesota's inequitable way of funding public education is not fair to our students, our taxpayers, or our community. All students deserve support and equitable opportunities. If you want to help, write a letter, send an email, or call your elected officials. For legislator contact information, visit the STMA website.
That is thanks to STMA teacher Ron Sass, who is now retired, for making me that. All right, thank you. So to reiterate, using this year's data, 86.4% of our general fund revenue comes from the state. Funding is largely based on student enrollment, so the more students we have, the more revenue. State funding is a combination of the basic formula, which is the same for each district, and this year that amount is $7,138 per pupil. And then you add in the categoricals. You can see the categoricals on the screen. I want to just give you a couple of examples because our students do not qualify, as it said in the video, for much of the categoricals. For example, one of the categoricals is transportation sparsity. This is based on the number of pupils per square mile. The state per pupil average is $102 per pupil. We receive $9 per pupil. Another category is compensatory, which is based on the percentage of students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. The state average is $791 per pupil. We receive $125 per pupil. One more example is referendum revenue. The state average is $1,031. We receive $0, as we do not have an operating levy. Keep in mind, these are per pupil amounts, and when you do the math, the difference between STMA and the state average is just over $13 million. And that is why STMA is ranked 322 out of 328 in per pupil funding. The result is this: a number of school districts, and these are districts that we compare ourselves to. We belong to the Lake Conference, and some may say we don't aspire to be the Lake Conference in the metro, and that's okay. But we also have a number of districts that are neighboring districts, and then districts that look like us in demographics and enrollment. You can see the amounts they get per pupil. These are the districts that are not ones that we pick because of their highest. Moving on, you may be familiar with these headlines. I won't read them to you, you can look at these. This is what happened during the 2023 legislative session. Here's what actually happened at STMA during the 2023, or at the end of the 2023 legislative session. I first want to point out that we acknowledge and appreciate the investments in education approved during the 2023 legislative session. The additional funding provides a foundation for restoring Minnesota's commitment to education. However, even with the new funding, historic inflation and new mandates adopted in the 2023 session, they've challenged our already strained budgets, and here is how they impact STMA. We did receive the general education basic formula. It's generally 2%. It was increased to 4% and then 2% for 2024-2025. Future increases are tied to inflation. We're very thankful for that. We're also thankful for the special education cross subsidy. It was increased 44%, and then in future years, 50%. Student support personnel aid, legislators allocated $29 million for this school year and then $35.3 million for next school year. In universal meals, annually, legislators allocated $200 million to provide free breakfast and free lunch to all students. But there is a note here. Make sure you notice that's no new revenue for the school district. When you look at policy provisions, there were numerous policy provisions in the education bill and as well as non-education bills, such as the labor and tax bills, that impacted the district's budget, student learning, and operations. Some of those mandates are funded, many of those are not. Here are some of them. There are dozens and dozens of these that we've been sifting through for the last few months. After factoring in the district's deficit and the money that we received from the state, we received $1.1 million the last legislative session. We were able to put that back into the classroom, and we were able to hire 16 FTE. And keep in mind, those of you that are from STMA know that over the past few years, we've cut 77 staff members, $7.3 million. This is a nice start. Before I go any further, I want to just briefly review our legislative platform. This was approved by the board in December. The platform focuses on funding and local control. In a nutshell, it's summarized in 3 things. Our students need, our staff need additional funding, no new mandates, and funding to support the mandates that were approved during the last session. This platform can be found on the QR code that you received. Now, I'd like to get started with the stories. This is the main event. We have a number of students, a number of staff members, parents, and a member of one of our cities that are going to talk about how funding impacts both our students, our staff, and our cities. So we're going to start off with Ms. Ella Olson.
Good evening. My name is Ella Olson, and I'm a senior here at STMA High School. Today, I would like to talk to you about opportunity and what it means for high school students. As I prepare to graduate in May, I am very aware that across the state of Minnesota, not every high school student walking that stage will have had these same educational opportunities. STMA is impacted by this. As students prepare for life after high school, one thing that is commonly thought about is college. As students prepare for college, the fear of tuition is very real. The solution that many students, including myself, turn to are AP classes. Advanced placement classes take place throughout the course of the year and leads up to a nationally administered exam in May. These credits are some of the most transferable college credits that a student can get in high school, transferring mainly across the nation and even on the global scale. However, in order for schools to implement AP classes, they must have resources available: textbooks, online resources, teachers. In the past few years, my school district has seen a large number of teachers leave the district. Many of them have left education as a whole for the private sector, and many of them left for other districts that receive much more funding, allowing them to earn higher salaries. When our school doesn't have enough funding to hire enough teachers for regular level classes, resulting in higher class sizes, it is understandable that AP classes tend to get placed on the back burner. While students could choose to learn the contents themselves at home and self-study for the exam in May, that takes a large sum of money and time for online resources, prep books, and the exam itself. This is not an affordable or an accessible option for many students. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Let me walk you through some other schools with the Lake Conference. STMA joined the Lake Conference in 2020, yet despite having many similarities to these schools, there are disparities, particularly concerning funding as well as academic opportunities. STMA is the lowest funded school within the Lake Conference, and our course offerings in regard to AP courses in world languages reflect that. So let's take a trip about 30 miles down the road and see just how these STMA courses compare. STMA currently offers about 16 AP classes in 2 world languages. However, schools such as Minnetonka offer 29 AP classes in 5 world languages, Wayzata is able to offer 34 AP classes in 4 world languages, and Edina is able to offer 26 AP classes in 5 world languages as well. What we are seeing is that other schools in the Lake Conference are able to provide at least 10 more AP classes and are able to double the amount of world language classes. But really, the only difference is the amount of funding. We are the lowest funded in the Lake Conference, and as a result, you can see a vast disparity between educational opportunities for students. This lack of funding doesn't just impact us at the high school level. Without these abilities to take as many AP classes and have as much access to college credit, we can't earn as many college credits to save money for college, which impacts us throughout the entirety of our lives. We are students. We don't get to pick where we live, where we attend school, and we do not get to pick the legislators that are in charge of properly funding our schools to give us the best opportunities. We are the future, and we are worth the investment. Although we might not get a say in our educational opportunities, that doesn't mean we don't deserve those opportunities. So today, I want to leave you with one simple question. Why are my educational opportunities limited because of where I live? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ella. Next is Chelsea Nipa. Chelsea, ready?
你好，我叫 Chelsea，我出国生活，生完课高中。I just said in Chinese. Hi, my name is Chelsea, and I'm a senior at STMA High School. And throughout these 4 years, I've been able to explore different languages such as Chinese and Spanish, and I've been able to explore different class curriculums. My first Chinese teacher was Mr. Kastner, and he was an amazing teacher, and he tried his best to do whatever he could with whatever he was given. And although he was given so much less, he was always able to make the classroom such a fun and enlightening experience. But shortly after he was here, the next year I came back to school expecting to see his face, and he transferred to a different school because our funding wasn't enough for him, and it wasn't enough for him to provide for his own family, so he had to make the right decision to protect his family. I could have built a really strong connection with him, but I never got the chance because of something so small as money and something so small as funding. And I feel like the connection between being connected to your teachers and also having enough funding is really what makes the classroom such a better place. Because if I didn't have that opportunity to first see him And if I kept that opportunity for him not leaving, I would be able to have a Chinese teacher that I can come to in the future and look up to, and just have an opportunity to build that connection with him. And so my new Chinese teacher, Miss Bear, aka Qing Lao Shi, she's such a fun person. I love her. She's my favorite person ever. She's so fun. She just comes in and she says hi to everyone. She's just enlightens the classroom. But I do have a big fear that next year she won't be here, or the next year she won't be here because of the past experiences due to funding. And this has happened to other teachers as well, and it diminishes the opportunities that I have and other students have to build that connection with their teachers, because the connection is really what is important in the classroom and what is important to other people's learning. This also happened to Mr. Simpson, my other math teacher. One year I had him, the next year he was gone, so I couldn't come to him with my problems. I couldn't come to him talking about just random stuff throughout the day. And better funding could open up those opportunities to build connections with those teachers and build connections with our school. It can also help us to make better choices throughout our years, because we will have some teacher or some set teacher to come to and have a relationship with. Without that funding, teachers are just able to be cut off, left off, and trading schools back to back to back to back, which is unstable for them and also unstable for us emotionally. Teachers also are affected by this inequitable funding at STMA. Since we are so low in the funding, it is affecting the way that we are portrayed to other schools as well. I came here from Park Center High School, and I made sure to research. I researched every school that I'm about to transfer to. I've transferred like 3 times to different schools, and I researched this school, and when I found out that our funding was very low, that was one big factor that pushed me away, and that is why our enrollment is so low, is because our funding is so low. Funding is an attractive thing. Like if I want to go to Monticello, which is our next door neighbors basically, their funding is so much better that it would pull me to go to that school and pull me to go there. But here, the only thing that really pulled me was because of the teachers and because of the experiences that other students have said. And although we may look good on the outside, it's really not the reality of what's going on inside of the classrooms. Our class sizes are huge. It's like next door with really tight to tight to tight. One teacher for about 40 students in an AP class. And we could get more funding if you guys just use your voices and speak for us, because I am 18 years of age, but I cannot vote yet. And I'm leaving it up to the parents and up to those who can vote and up to those who do have a stronger voice in this battle, so they can fund for my education and the future of my sisters as well. I have 2 younger sisters who go to this school, to Brooklyn, my old middle school, to West, and they love it here, and they would like to have more opportunities to build relationships with their teachers. They're talking to me every day about how much they love their teachers and how much they're so excited to go to school every day, and I want to keep that spark in them. And if the funding decreases, obviously they're going to want to move to another school, like how I wanted to move to another school. And if funding at STMA is such a big problem in the future, it's going to lessen the opportunities for us to grow in higher education, because then we have less chances for AP classes, less chances to take Chinese, and also we won't be able to have the mindset of wanting more when we're not given the opportunity to want more. And excellence is our tradition, but we have to do something about it to keep it up. It's not just we're given what we have and work on that. It might look like it's okay, but it's not okay. And we need to fight for better equitable funding for STMA so we can grow and we can have better opportunities for kids and your kids and my kids in the future if they want to go to here. Thank you.
Next, thank you, Chelsea. Next, we have Miss Mary Bain.
Hello, my name is community member and a parent. My husband, Mark, and I are the parents of 3 children currently attending the STMA school district. Our daughters, Ellie and Grace, are in middle school, and our son, Brett, is in 9th grade at the high school. Since moving to St. Michael 11 years ago, I have supported the STMA school district in many ways, including the elementary PTO, the district finance advisory committee, the legislative action team, advocating as a community member for our operating levy, working as an English learners paraprofessional, and substitute teaching. These opportunities have allowed me to see our district through multiple lenses and learn more than I could have ever imagined. Tonight, I will focus on what I learned while advocating for a school district operating levy as a community member in 2021, which unfortunately failed. I would also like to note that our district attempted another operating levy in 2022 for a lesser amount, and this one failed as well. These results made it clear that our community was either not willing or not able to bear the burden of a tax increase to support our schools. Historically, St. Michael Albertville has been a very supportive community for the needs of the schools. The failure of these 2 operating levies brings up questions as to what has changed. There is not a single answer to these questions, but one concern that I have heard repeatedly from community members is how much their taxes would go up during a time of high inflation. Our family lives in a moderate home, and with the first levy proposal, our taxes would have increased by about $1,000. My husband and I have never thought twice about supporting public education, but this increase did catch our attention. While advocating for the 2021 proposed levy as a community member, I did have many conversations with homeowners of St. Michael and Albertville. I appreciate listening to other people's point of view. Concerns I heard from community members in regards to voting for an operating levy include, and these were actually quotes or things that people said that I wrote down at that time. Number 1, I'm worried about what people are saying about inflation in the near future, and that did indeed happen. Number 2, did you see how much of our property taxes go to the school? Number 3, these were my neighbors. We're retired and on a fixed income, and this big of a tax increase is concerning to us. Number 4, we support the schools, but this is a big increase in our taxes. Number 5, why are there so many mandates that aren't fully funded? The state should pay for that, not me. Whether these statements are right or wrong is not for anyone to decide. These are real and valid concerns that taxpayers have in STMA in regards to supporting an operating levy. I often find myself thinking about how the STMA community can comfortably get on board to support an operating levy that our district desperately needs for a source of continuous funding. After the most recent audit, our general unassigned fund balance came in at 21.3%. I realize our fund balance is high, but one reason it is high is because of the uncertainty of the future and trying to be fiscally responsible with many unknowns. Each year, our district has to make hard financial decisions that affect kids and staff for the following school year before the legislative session ends. We often do receive one-time funds, which are great and we are very thankful for. But the uncertainty of how much or even whether there will be funds makes it extremely hard to commit dollars to retain and hire staff. One way I believe the state of Minnesota can help our taxpayers become more comfortable supporting an operating levy, leading to continuous funding that our financial planners can count on, is to increase equalization aid. We are a property-poor community, so a heavy financial burden of an operating levy falls on residential homeowners. I believe equalization aid, like the bill Chair Joachim presented in 2023, is a realistic foundational piece to help homeowners be more willing to support future levies. A big positive of equalization aid is it doesn't just benefit one community. It supports taxpayers across the state of Minnesota. If we could tell voters the state would put in a respectable amount of dollars towards a levy, this shows support from the state and would allow more taxpayers to comfortably vote yes for schools. Minnesota homeowners would get to keep more of their hard-earned money in their pockets while also supporting public education. The Minnesota Constitution states, "It is the duty of the legislature to establish a general and uniform system of public schools. The legislature shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise as will secure a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state." There currently is not much uniformity in the way taxpayers from Minnesota communities are being taxed to support this educational right for students. Improved equalization is one step our state can take to help accomplish this. It seems like a combined effort between the education and tax committees is needed for this. I am here tonight to ask our legislators serving on these committees to work together on this and move equalization forward to help the homeowners, schools, and kids of Minnesota. Thank you.
All right, next is Mr. Eric Dickelson.
Hi, my name is Eric Dickelson. I have had 3 kids in and out of the district. My daughter Violet is 13, my son Louis is 11, and my youngest daughter Clara is 8. It feels a little uncomfortable to come up and complain on behalf of a couple of my kiddos who are at the top of their class, but that's why I'm here and it's important. We aren't doing enough for a number of kids in STMA and outside Metro. I want to talk about my youngest daughter, Clara. So from a very early age, you could just see Clara have the sparkle in her eye. Like she could sass you when she was about 1.5. She understood social situations, and you could just tell that she got it. Now I'm going to show you a picture that's not going to help reinforce that, but it should be for that. So that's Clara. Okay. So when Clara went to kindergarten, and she was already reading chapter books. And kindergarten started off well, things were going well, and then COVID hit. World turned upside down, fast forward, right, a year, and the school's coming back together, and it's crazy for everyone. And Claire's in 1st grade. And every day she's coming home either in tears or just with a sad look on her face, and that's not her personality. And the problem was she was bored. To put it simply, she was bored in school. And we worked closely with her teacher, and her teacher was great, and he tried to hear us and meet us where we're at, and he did a lot of differentiating, but that is not how you work with kids who are gifted or advanced. You don't just give them supplemental material and hope that they work on it on their own and they're engaged. So it didn't seem like a great solution to go permanently, how are we gonna handle this? And so we started to look around, and part of our motivation was that we had heard that the high potential program in St. Michael, which had been there for years and years, started in 2nd grade, increased a little bit in 3rd grade, and then was more full-fledged in 4th grade. That was going away. So, because the funding wasn't there. So that did not seem like a solution for our kiddo who was coming home sad every day for school. So we started to look around, and Buffalo, fortunately for us, Buffalo has the funding to offer that program, and it's called Quest. And so you test in a quest, and it is a very focused, smaller program for kids who hit certain levels. And it's been wonderful for Clara as a whole. She comes home and she talks about her day every day. She's engaged. It's a challenge for her, and school is what it's supposed to be for kiddos. It didn't come without its challenges, though. It requires a lot of juggling from our family. Our kids are in different districts. We juggle schedules, we juggle busing, we also juggle playdates. And Clara, now again, in the grand scheme of things, there are worse crosses to bear, but she gave up her best friend as a second grader, which is hard to have your kid do. Besides that, we've had my eldest daughter, Violet. Now, she is in Buffalo still. She went through STMA's high potential program, and it was the perfect program for her. Anytime I asked her tonight, what should I say when I come to speak to this panel of people? And she said, Mrs. Norberg is the best. That's what she said. And Violet had been the quiet kid in class who always did her job because she thinks school is a job, and she always followed the rules. And Mrs. Norberg turned school from, again, a quiet, sort of boring place into this engaging place where she felt seen and she felt heard. Sorry, one second, I lost my spot. So, one of the analogies I wanted to make, and it's not perfect, but I do think there's some comparisons. A lot of us have been in sports or have kids who are in sports. And right, if you think about the levels in sports, there is single A ball, there's double A ball, there's triple A ball. Coaches don't have all those players on the same field at the same time. And there are reasons for that, right? Kids are at different levels and they're ready for different challenges in different moments. Those coaches have different lessons and different strategies to hit those kids in different places. And right now, we have students in our classes, because of funding issues, because we can't give the programming, that are ready for the big leagues and they're in double A ball. While I know there are so many wonderful opportunities that STMA offers, and so many kids experience success here and flourish and have amazing experiences, we are still leaving a number of our kids behind and not giving them the programming that they deserve. So while our family, one of the biggest priorities we have is education. And I fundamentally believe in the power of public schools. We need to do better for all of our students who are walking into our school doors, and it should be based on the school district that they live in. While it's easy to dismiss or overlook the kids that get A's because they do all right, we are not giving them the challenge that they deserve or the opportunities or education that they deserve. Part of the task of schools is to give opportunities to our big thinkers, to our leaders, and to our innovators. I hope you'll make changes to the funding formula to make school a better place for all students across Minnesota. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Next we have Mrs. Becky Simpson and Mrs. Mickey Rito. Are you coming up to Mickey or together? Okay, separate.
Hello, I am Becky Simpson, and I'm a third grade teacher at Fieldstone Elementary. And I've been in the St. Michael Alphaville School District for approximately 18 years. That is hundreds and hundreds of students that I've had the privilege to work with. I'm here today to voice the concerns I see each and every day in my classroom and our school as a direct result of inadequate funding. As a teacher, people often remark how they don't know how I do what I do. Teachers hear it all the time. This comes, of course, mostly from people outside the education field. But my answer is always the same. It's because of the kids. Every year, the kids I speak of come to us from varying social-emotional backgrounds with different needs, ability levels, looking for some kind of connection that our seniors spoke of, sometimes 2 grade levels behind, or needing enrichment. How am I supposed to help all of my students when there are 29 of them? 29 8 and 9-year-olds. Many times parents are surprised to find we have class sizes so large at the elementary level. Teachers are working so hard to make sure that families and students do not feel the effects of unequal funding. We don't want the kids or the families to be effective. At first glance, our schools do not display the needs that others in different zip codes with more funding have. We are fortunate for many reasons, but our district staff have worked tirelessly so that kids don't feel a burden, so parents, families don't feel a burden. Look closer though, and you will see teachers needing to spend more and more time, too much time, managing large class sizes. This means less time teaching, less time learning. This also means less individualized instruction for students, not knowing every student's strengths and weaknesses, fewer collaborative learning opportunities, more misbehavior, less engagement in the students, less connections with peers and teachers, less resources, and all of this results in less learning. Teachers want to make those strong connections and truly get to know and help every single student, no matter the age. What's keeping us from forming these connections and creating classroom community and helping kids excel is funding. We should not receive fewer dollars per student because of a formula. We should not receive fewer dollars per student because of a zip code. We need representation that hears our concerns, whether it's a teacher, a student, a parent, a community member, and does something. The kids and the school staff need help. We need help. My 29 third graders and I are affected daily by unequal school funding. I wish I could give them the education they deserve. I wish I could go back and give all the hundreds of kids the education they deserve because of the large class sizes. And I wish I could give them the attention that all of those little 8 and 9-year-olds crave and need. We all deserve better. Thank you for your time.
All right, next, third grade teacher, Mickey Riedel.
Hello, my name is Mickey Riedel, and thank you for being here tonight. I did have to laugh. Becky and I are on the same team. We work across the hall from each other, and we wrote our speeches separately, and then we came together to discuss them. And essentially, you're going to hear the same speech again. So, I'm a proud parent, like some of these others, of 2 graduates of STMA High School, and a voting resident of St. Michael, Albertville for 19 years, and a third grade teacher at Fieldstone Elementary for 15 years. I have deep roots in this community, and I want to see our school flourish and grow. Inadequate funding is an obstacle in this for us. The purpose of this forum is to understand the effects that funding shortages have on our students. You will hear about many, you have heard about many different aspects of that funding, but today I've chosen to speak to you about the negative effects of large classroom sizes. Having groups of 28 to 33 in the last couple of years at our grade level has presented many challenges. Take a moment to imagine yourself in a room full of 30 9-year-olds, all wanting your attention, all at the same time, all in the same space. At the very least, you can see that this would be a difficult way to teach. As the district puts great emphasis on social, emotional learning, large class sizes is compromising that work. In the classroom, I see this directly with decreased connections, we heard it from one of our students here, between students and teachers. It is difficult to try to make a significant interaction with each of the 30 students every day. Teachers are stretched trying to build those relationships. Teachers can be a strong social, emotional support when they can connect with those students, and we want this for all of our kiddos. Secondly, meeting with students to have individualized learning is greatly reduced with large class sizes, affecting growth and gains of students' academic skills. At the elementary level, we know it's crucial to intervene and support learning in a small setting to improve gains. Large class numbers equals a wider learning gap in our classroom and makes it even more challenging to meet the wide variety of needs. More needs and less time to address it is not the way to create success. It is our job to prepare students for middle school and high school, and that above scenario will not get that job done well. And thirdly, Becky mentioned many of these in her list, but directly putting it, large class groups of students increases everything. Wait time, noise, volume, processing of information, distractions, physical space for desks, we're talking about side by side, destruction of our supplies, behaviors, and even the amount of time waiting to use the restroom. Everything takes more time, and that takes away from student learning. The shortages and inequitable funding that STMA faces has led to these large class sizes, and is truly a disservice to the students in our district. They deserve class sizes and other funding resources to be equivalent to even what some of their siblings have had. Reasonable class-to-teacher ratios, making their access to education as equitable as the other neighbors near us, districts, and around the state. Thank you for listening to how funding shortages affects the daily lives of students at STMA. Hopefully you will continue to work diligently to enhance and support our students' learning opportunities here at St. Michael Albertville School. The students, they need your voice and they need your representation. Go STMA.
All right, next we have 7th grade teacher, Mr. Blair Huggins.
Hello, senators, representatives, thank you, Dr. Foucault, community members. My name is Blair Huggins, and I am an Albertville resident, parent of 2 children here in the school district, a freshman and a 5th grader, and I'm an educator here at STMA. I stand before you here today to highlight the most critical issue that is plaguing our school district, its detrimental impact of inequitable state funding. St. Michael Albertville continues to grapple with soaring class sizes, making it arduous for educators to provide quality education in overcrowded spaces. I'm holding a prop here. I've got a poster representing each of the students that I work with, each day building relationships with, 154 students that I work to educate each day. Each of these students has individual identities, they have individual stories, interests, and needs. And despite what some may believe, the educators in our district are dedicated to the needs of our students. There are reasons that we teach and the motivation behind our activism regarding school funding. Quality education starts with strong student relationships. And those student relationships are difficult, nearly impossible to cultivate with class sizes this large. Teaching in packed classrooms hampers the learning experience for our students, and it places an undue burden on our dedicated teaching staff. The repercussions of these challenges are evident in the departure of many skilled educators from our district, and many of them are dear friends. The exodus of teaching staff not only compromises the continuity of education, but also undermines the overall quality of learning that our students deserve. This past fall, a teacher in my building left for another district, leaving a vacancy that was very difficult to fill. After patching that hole with 2 other teachers, I've been asked to give up my prep period and have been tasked with adding yet another class to my workload. I am now their 4th different teacher in that class this year. 27 more students. I actually had 181 total students this year. It is imperative that we address the root cause. This is inadequate state funding to ensure a brighter future for our students and retain the talented educators who play a pivotal role in shaping that future. Our district does not have an operating levy. An operating levy was on the ballot in 21 and 22 and both failed. We're one of the few in the state, by the way. Our community feels overburdened by taxes, and when given the opportunity to to save money, they vote in opposition. However, our community values education. We value our educators and our schools, and they want to help. And equalization aid could be just what we need to encourage my community to pass a levy so that we can leverage the needed help from our state. I hope that perhaps maybe Representative Baker could talk on that a little bit later. I urge you to consider the long-term consequences of neglecting our schools and take decisive action to allocate sufficient resources for our schools and our students. Our children's education and the stability of our school district and our community depend on your commitment to providing the funding needed to create an environment that is conducive to effective teaching and learning. Thank you for your time, and again, I hope that you can speak on Mr. Baker.
Last but certainly not least, Albertville City Councilman Aaron Cockey.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Aaron Cockey, and I'm on the Albertville City Council. Some of you may know in my day job, I'm the president and CEO of the Insurance Federation of Minnesota, which means I spend a considerable amount of time at the legislature. I thought, as Dr. Foucault asked me to talk about this back to my first legislative session in 2006, the Senate Minority Leader at that point was a guy by the name of Dick Day. Name probably doesn't mean much to many of you in here, but the one thing that Dick Day always talked about, he was a senator from Owatonna, and he said, why is a kid in Owatonna worth less than a kid in Minneapolis? And as we talk about this in the realm of STMA, that has always rattled around in my mind. I talk to you about this. Why is a kid in Albertville worth less than a kid in Minneapolis? Why is a kid in Albertville worth less than a kid in St. Paul? They're not. It's unfair. We've heard all these stories tonight that have touched on this. From a community perspective, one of the things that people look at, first and foremost, when you're deciding where you're going to move and where you're going to raise your family, is the quality of schools. We've had good luck kind of despite our lack of funding, but you heard Ella talk about it. The number of AP courses available, the availability that other classes and other schools in the Lake Conference have that we don't have here in STMA is fundamentally unfair. Why is a kid in Albertville worth less than any other kid in the Lake Conference? They're not, and that's unfortunate. So as we talk about and we kind of look, again, from the community perspective, and as we've got people that are looking to buy houses here, there is an implication as you look, what's offered? What are the class sizes that we're dealing with? You have other options if you don't already live here on where you want to place your family, and that has larger implications to the communities of St. Michael and Albertville as a whole. As we try to get these developments, you have to have people. As we hear constantly about the services that don't currently exist in these cities, one of the things we need is people. And if we don't have the strong schools and the funding to back that up, that becomes a significant issue. So I'll roll back. If you didn't get my talking point again, we'll leave with this. Anybody who leaves here tonight, you should know a kid in Albertville is not worth less than a kid in any other part of Minnesota. Thank you.
Well, I bet if you're like me, your heart is breaking. And you're probably experiencing a lot of feelings right now. Anger, frustration, sadness. There's a lot. Thank you to the speakers for coming and sharing those stories with us. Now we're going to move on to our legislators. I want to review a few reminders so that we can stay on task. The purpose of tonight's forum is to share our stories and advocate for change. We are here for students. At STMA, you heard the stories. We always put students first, and we put them at the center of each and every decision that we make. Let's continue to keep students at the forefront this evening. STMA is nonpartisan. I'm fond of telling our staff and visitors that we shed our political beliefs when we walk through the school horse doors. When you are asking legislators questions, please remember to be respectful, listen in support of students, please stay engaged, focus on questions and priorities that are on the STMA School Board approved legislative platform. Please address personal or unrelated inquiries with legislators privately. I know they would each welcome an opportunity to speak with you privately. Please limit questions to one per individual unless we have time at the end. And please avoid repeating questions that have already been asked. At this time, I would like to invite our legislators up to the stage so that we have a mic up here, and then as they're doing that, if you want to ask a question, Caitlin is standing up here. She can help you find the mic. You can come up here. Please state your name and ask your question, and then legislators can respond to it. Great, if you'd like to ask a question, you can find Caitlin here in the front. You might have to go to her, she can go to you too. I'll come down and you might have to come up here, Sonia. We put our money in the classrooms, not so much in technology.
Again, I'd just like to thank the school district for hosting, and thank you to the legislators for participating in this forum this evening. A 6 p.m. meeting on a work night is not always easy and challenging when you're coming from another area, right, Rep. Clarity? In full disclosure, again, my name's Sonia Buckmeyer. I'm a resident of St. Michael, and I'm also going to be a candidate for House Representative in 2024. We've lived here nearly 30 years. We raised our kids here. They graduated from our high school. Public education is an investment in our society. I have volunteered and served on numerous operating and bond levy committees. I have voted yes for every single operating and bond levy that's been put before the school district. We are bond debt heavy. Currently, we have no operating levy. Roughly 40% of my taxes go to the local school district. I'm an average taxpayer, residential resident here. Our city taxes are low, but again, I just want to repeat that 40% of my taxes go to the school district. This past session, there has been traction on bills to increase that local operational operating revenue, debt service equalization, and other bills that, as Mr. Huggins referred to, that Chair Joachim did with the operating levy, equalization aid, property taxes. There was lots of opportunities, lots of bills, 2 or 3 bills. You guys could probably clarify some of those. Many had bipartisan support, but they seem to have stalled out in the tax committees. What steps are being taken for these committees to work together to get the bills to the floor, and how can we help advocate to move them forward?
I think there's a mic up there. Yes.
Good evening. Loud enough. First of all, this forum is really important to me. I'm a teacher, been teaching for 28 years, and I'm also in the legislature, which helps me make the decisions that are important to our children. This is the main reason I got into the legislature, is because I've been working in schools for 28 years, and I also have had the class of 29, and it does make a difference. And then I will get to the question, but one other thing I want to say is that your district has to, we have to stay student-centered. And with that, the tax committee does need to work with the education committee, like Mary said early in the evening. And there are already conversations that have started in that area. The commitment has to be on the students. And equalization started in 1991 when my daughter was a baby, and it was specifically to equalize the funding. And within, the last thing I want to say on that is within the districts, some of the districts are weighted differently because of special ed students and second language students. But every student should be funded. Class sizes should not be 29. I've taught it that. It's been very difficult.
I guess it's my turn, huh? So, my name is Ben Bakeford. Mr. Huggins referenced me, so I was an administrator in the district about 10 years ago. So, to be blunt, I came back because I love STMA. My family and I moved away for other career opportunities, but this is an amazing school district. So, I worked with Dr. Foucault when she was the the kindergarten center principal. My daughter was a third grader, I think, when we left, and third or fourth grader. She's now a sophomore in college. son that was a kindergartner is now a senior in high school. And then the little boy that we adopted, for those of you that know, he's now in 5th grade. In my normal job, I'm a middle school principal, and he's now a student in the building. So I got involved in the legislature because, honestly, a lot of the frustrations that were shared tonight from everyone, I live it every day, and I see what the decisions that are made in St. Paul, and frankly, people don't understand the ramifications of those decisions that happen in the classroom. So I was born and raised in Cokato, Minnesota, and I was taught that if you're going to whine and complain about something, you better step up and do it. So that's why I ran for office. So to be very blunt, we have to have the political will to do the right thing. So we just had a historic surplus, and we did not move on equalization. That's the truth. So I hate to be blunt, but I also was taught that you speak truth. So talk is cheap. We have to get stuff done, and we have to work together. Like, this political division is disgusting. We have to put our differences aside. I really appreciate Rep. Clardy. She and I have had some very honest conversations, and frankly, I really enjoy working with her. She's a wonderful person. We have to work together to do what's right for kids. And honestly, that doesn't always happen in St. Paul, and that's unfortunate. So someone asked about, what can we do? You need to be vocal, and you need to make your voice heard to whoever will listen. I've had really good conversations with Representative Hudson, and I have learned a ton from him, and hopefully he's learned a few things from me. And I really appreciate the perspective he brings as well. So the bottom line is, in order to address this, regardless of party affiliation, you have to have the political will to do the right thing. So one of the things that I've been working on is truancy. And there are significant issues with truancy. It ties into mental health. And I was in a meeting, and I won't say who the rep was, but this rep looked at me and just said, Ben, I have to check with the Minneapolis delegation to see if this has any legs. So it's something that's an issue. We have kids that are disappearing, and I'm told that we can't move forward because of that. That's wrong. So that's why I'm running. I'm in the minority. I'm a Republican, just in case you didn't know. Sorry, Anne Marie, to bring in the politics piece. But I would think that I'm a common sense person to do the right thing for kids, and really trying to listen and learn, and that's why I'm here.
So I will leave the particulars as to the dynamics between the committees and how committees relate to one another to the chair and vice chair that we have available to address that. But I wanted to offer some introductory observations that are relevant to the overall conversation. First of all, I've been on that side of this transaction, sitting in that chair, wherever this has been held since I first moved into the community in 2012, when we first relocated our family here. In between the birth of my two sons, both of whom are students in this district. And so I'm well aware, as many, if not most of you are, of the fact that this is an echoed sentiment over time. This conversation has been going on for a very long time about the inequity of funding in the STMA school district, and frankly other school districts surrounding us. But this has been held in Buffalo, because they have issues as well with funding. And the one thing that I want to note, just kind of set the tone here for today, is that in those past years, there have been fewer people up here. In those past years, you would have Mary Kiffmeyer, one of the local senators. You would have then Representative Eric Lucero, one of the local representatives, and maybe a couple of other people whose districts the event was taking place in. And one of the things that was consistently said year over year is we need to get people from outside the area to come in and take a listen. And thank them for doing that here tonight. This is fantastic. We've got the chair of the Senate Education Committee with us here tonight. We've got the vice chair in the House. This is progress in this conversation that has never happened before. You've got Patty Mueller, who traveled from Austin. You've got Ben Bakeberg, who traveled from Jordan. You've got Cardi, who traveled from Inver Grove. Kunish is from New Brighton, I believe, is correct? So we're casting a wide net in terms of the perspectives, and their willingness to travel here says a lot about the ability for us to have this conversation. So I just wanted to state that at the outset, and I'll let my colleagues continue to address the committee issue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Senator Mary Kunish. I represent District 39, which are the communities of St. Anthony Village, New Brighton, Columbia Heights, Fridley, Spring Lake Park, and Hilltop. I am a retired teacher of 25 years. Finished my third year in the Minnesota Senate and had 4 years in the Minnesota House with Representative Lucero here. And during those 4 years, I continued teaching. So coming out of the schools is very fresh to me. I was a library media specialist. I was also my union rep, so I knew what was going on. I had those relationships with all of the teachers, and when those large class sizes came to me, I had them as well. And so like many of us here, it's education, it was that frustration that led me to run for office, and fortunately this year, when the Democrats took the majority by one, in the Senate, I was very, very fortunate to be named the chair of Education Finance. And financing schools is an extremely, extremely complicated task to do. And we have to remember that we've had decades of underfunding or no funding or borrowing from the schools and not paying the schools back that we're trying to make up. And 1 year is not going to undo all of that. But knock on wood, hopefully I'll be there for 4 years along with the policy chair, Senator Swadzinski, who is also a retired teacher. We have Representative Clardy, who is the vice chair in the House, who is a teacher, and then we have Chair Yao Kim, who is the chair of Education Finance in the House, and she herself is a substitute teacher. So probably for the first time in Minnesota's history, we have educators who are making those tough decisions. And we talk about these equalization funds, and I'm 100% all for that. I spent the summer traveling all over Minnesota, talking to schools, talking to administrators, talking to teachers, talking to families, and it's the same problem everywhere. And when you look at districts that have more than St. Michael Albertville, it's because they either have a stronger tax base where they're getting those tax dollars off of the businesses and the homeowners, or they have passed referendum levies. So it really doesn't matter. It might happen that you live in a certain zip code, but it's not because your zip code that you're not getting the funding that you want. And so, I mean, my promise is, and knock on wood, that I'll be there for 3 more years, that we will continue to look at the issues that plague our schools. Not just the funding, but also how we can make sure that those resources that we are allocating to our schools are getting to the classroom. So that the teachers have the resources that they need, the schools have the space for their students, and that the students are getting those dollars that we are sending to the school. I know there was a slide up there that had all of these mandates that we did this last session. Those were not unfunded mandates. The unemployment for our hourly workers, you think of all those parents that are taking your kids to and from classrooms, that are taking care of our SPED kids, that are working in the lunchrooms, that are doing all of that work to support our communities. They receive a really low wage. Don't you you think they should receive unemployment during the summer? We put aside $138 million in a whole different line item so that schools could offer summer school and create classes in the summer. And if they didn't have enough space for those teachers were able to get unemployment. It didn't cost the school because they get reimbursed for that. There might be a slight jag, but they get reimbursed 100% for the hours that they gave for unemployment. The READ Act, we allocated $35 million to that, and a lot of that was for curriculum. Is it enough? No, it is not, and we know that, and we will continue to work on that. Paid professional development for our paras. Don't you think that those hourly workers should have some training in the areas that they're going to be working? If they're going to be helping your third grader with math, if you've looked at that third grade math, they should know how to do that math. If they're helping your student on a Chromebook, they should know how to use a Chromebook. They should have their own Chromebook so that they can get in there and use the programs that your students are going to do. So we funded 8 hours of the whole school year, 8 hours of professional development for paras. I don't think that's too much. Menstrual products and opioid antagonists, we allocated $764,000 for those products. It was $3.5 million in fiscal year 24 and $3.7 million in fiscal year 25. So we funded those. Earned safe and sick time, paid family leave, medical leave. A lot of schools already do that. So that shouldn't be that big of an issue for our school districts. Collective bargaining. All we did is we said that teachers, during the bargaining time, can bring up the subject of class sizes. There's no money involved there. There's no money. All we said is that they can bring it up and it has to be part of the discussion. So, we hear about all these unfunded mandates. We also freed up millions and millions and millions of dollars by paying down on the special ed cross subsidy, the EL cross subsidy, and we did give some transportation relief. And so there are dollars that can be used for other areas, and I think that what we did when we put almost $5.5 million into early education through community ed and adult learning, those were really, really good investments, but it's just the beginning. We have 3 more years at least under my tenure to do the investments that we'd like to see. And is equalization aid one of those things on our list? Absolutely is. So, long answer to a quick question.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Eric Lucero, when we gavel in here in the 2024 session, I will be going into my 10th year serving this community in the Minnesota legislature. And it has been a true honor and privilege. And I'm so thankful for the legislators for coming out to this community and to Senator Kanish for coming out, all of you. It really does mean a lot to myself and to everybody in this community. And I do have the privilege, the honor of serving on the Senate Education Finance Committee with Senator Kanish as chair. And I truly mean that because education is, I can't go into all the background now, but it is deeply important to me. To the students who spoke, thank you. Very amazingly articulate. Yeah. To the parents who spoke, thank you. Thank you for sharing the stories. To the teachers, Mr. Huggins, thank you. I remember being invited, I think it was my first term, out to your classroom to spend a period with some students at that time. To Dr. Fugel, and to the board members that are here, to the city council members, I've seen members from both Albertville, St. Michael here, I've seen county commissioners from Wright County here. It is such an amazing community of everybody working together for the furtherance of our children in this community. But I'm just gonna give a double kudos to Dr. Fugel. So, again, going into 10 years, when I started, she wasn't the superintendent. I think she came in 1 or 2 years after I began to serve in the legislature. But an amazing leader, dedicated, and the time, effort, and passion that she puts in is absolutely second to none. So I'm so thankful for her and her leadership. And recently, Representative Hudson and I had the opportunity to be principal for a day. And we had the opportunity in that, as part of that engagement, to meet with the staff that she's assembled over these years. What an amazing staff. And to hear the voices, and then to be able to go into the classrooms and interact with some of the teachers there. And I'll tell you, I was just so impressed firsthand, just reconfirming the dedication that these teachers have day in and day out. And one thing I really took away for me was the amount of patience, love, and care with these interactions with the children, the students. So I'm just, again, so deeply appreciative. To the question was what actions are being taken. So in my time in the legislature, I have chief authored and co-authored many different bills seeking to fund or help bring additional dollars to those school districts at the bottom, such as STMA. And in my time in the legislature, I've been in the majority and in the minority in the House. And I've been as capacity of senator, I'm in the minority. And all throughout that time, I've had many different bill hearings, but unfortunately, they don't get traction, and it's a bipartisan frustration. When I was in the majority in the House, the bills, I was granted a courtesy of bill hearings, but they would never make their way into the omnibus funding bill. And as this group probably knows, I have voted against every education omnibus bill in my time in the office. And that's the reason why. Primary reason why is because they don't address, they continue to make the gap further. And so even in the majority, I had to take my bills and offer them as amendments on the then House floor. And the chief or the committee chairs would speak against them. And then when I was in the minority in the House, the same bills now, I'm not even being granted bill hearings in committee, I would take those bills, turn them into amendments, and then offer them on the floor. And the bills, by the way, the effort has been a bipartisan one. Many of the bills that I chief authored have both Democrat and Republican co-authors on them. Because again, it's not just STMA, it's trying to build a coalition of school districts across the state that have a similar financial difficulty. And to my amazement and frustration, when I offer that very amendment, the bill that I've turned into amendment on the House floor then, some of my co-authors in the bill spoke against it and then voted against it. Okay, so now fast forward to the Senate, similar bills. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get a hearing in the committee, so I offered it. For those who might be following this, I know many of you thank you for watching and paying attention to the hearings online. I took one of the bills and turned it into an amendment, offered it in committee. It seemed like there might have been some positive movement, so I withdrew that amendment, for those who might remember. Continued to try to have conversations. Then when the Senate floor, when the omnibus bill came to the Senate floor, I put that as an amendment, as I've done when I was in the House, on the full Senate floor. And to my amazement and pleasant surprise, it actually passed. The amendment was adopted into the omnibus bill, bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans voted for it. Unfortunately, that amendment, that language, which I actually have here before me, which targets money at the bottom, did not make it, did not survive through the conference committee. What a conference committee is, it's the negotiations between House and Senate for a final bill that then goes back for one more vote. And so what I'm planning to do and hoping to do is continue to fight for this language. It's bipartisan. It helps communities across the state to get a bill hearing this year. Now, it's not a funding year, but hopefully there's some targets that are granted, much smaller than in a funding year, supplemental funding that maybe some of these dollars can help bills like this. And so that's, to answer the question, that's what I'm doing in cooperative, bipartisan fashion in committees to try to get traction.
And I understand the frustration of this community, and I can imagine the frustration of Senator Lucero for not being able to pass this legislation. But the legislation that Senator Lucero shared with us on the Minnesota Senate floor, what was it, at 6 a.m. in the morning? After hours and hours and hours of our GOP members filibustering us from 3 in the morning, finally till 6 o'clock in the morning, we finally got to hear the bill. Asked for relief for the lowest 20% of school districts that are receiving the lowest amount of monies from the school, from the state. Included in that 20% are some of the wealthiest districts in our state. So that meant that school districts like Minnetonka would receive additional equalization funding. And that's why it wasn't included at the end of the day. I mean, the bill looks great, it sounds great, I would love to be able to do something like that, but we have to make sure that the schools that need it the most are the ones that are getting the funding. And so sometimes these general formulas or these general ideas sound really great, but when you delve into it and look at the consequences and where those fundings are really going to go, it doesn't make sense. And that's the reason it hasn't moved any further than this table.
And I want to move on to the next, but so I don't want to get hung up on this. But, and that is true, there was a handful of school districts, as we saw with the complicated formula. It is really complicated, and it's even more complicated when you're trying to offer language to an already complicated formula. But by and large, most of the funding would have gone to help the bottom. And so when in the legislative process, there is something like that, I want to work out details. But unfortunately, that's what never happens. It's just dies on the cutting room floor, behind closed doors. Rather than actually come back, oh, I really have an interest in this, a genuine interest, Eric, what can we do to maybe tweak to target and eliminate some of that? And we've done some of that. I know Brad Lundell, I saw him earlier, I think he's probably still here. And we're working to try to refine that language even a little bit more. So what I have before me here is not the exact amendment that I offered last year. It's been further tweaked to try to further refine. So it's mostly the same, but slightly different, that I'll be introducing as a new bill in the coming legislative session. And again, hoping to cooperatively get a bill hearing so we can actually try to help the school districts across the state that are in positions like STMA.
Just to add a little bit more context to that as well. So there, as has already been mentioned, this is a bipartisan problem because the districts that suffer with low per pupil revenue are represented by both Republicans and Democrats. And so there is recognition, I think, in both bodies of the legislature that on both sides of the aisle that this is something that needs to be addressed, which is why you don't just have one bill that has been introduced to try to solve the problem. So the bill that Senator Lucero and I chief authored is one approach to solving the problem. There are other bills that were introduced, and in fact, one of those was by the chair of the Education Committee in the House, Chair McKean. And that actually, my understanding is, was referred out of her committee to the Taxes Committee, and it's already been noted that there's some issues there in terms of coordinating between education and taxes on getting something done. All that just to make the point that there are different prescribed approaches to how to solve the problem. It doesn't have to be the lowest 20% of districts get revenue. But I do appreciate you being here, Senator Kunesh, to provide the answer to Ms. Olson's question. So the question that Ms. Olson asked was, why is it, underlying, that we don't provide the same opportunities to students in certain areas as opposed to others? And the answer to the question that I have continually heard is that we don't want to provide additional help to communities that we perceive to be doing well. Whether that's financially, or if you look at the categoricals in the funding formula, in terms of how their actual outcomes are. And so one way to answer that question is the slogan of this district. Excellence is our tradition. That's not just a slogan. We have the receipts. We have the results. Excellence has been the tradition here at STMA. And for that reason, it falls down to literally one of the absolute lowest priorities in terms of providing per pupil funding, because the schema of the legislative approach to funding public education in this state has been to focus on where the problems are and to provide resources to the people who are perceived to, quote unquote, need them the most. And so the reason why we can't have as many AP offerings here in STMA as you see in other school districts, the underlying ideological reason would seem to be that. And I'm glad that I have colleagues from the other side of the aisle to address that, because I certainly don't want to be accused of erecting a straw man.
And I just wanted to add one more thing about the Chair Joachim's bill going to the tax committee. So we can't just pass whatever we want out of the education committee. If it has taxes in it, has anything to do with taxes, it has to go to taxes to have a hearing. If it has anything to do with health and human services, they have to hear it as well. If there's funding, at the end of the day, it has to go to finance. If there's something in there that is going to affect your taxes, my taxes, the entire state tax, which equalization will do, it has to go to the tax committee. And they have to hear it. And they have to look at what this impact is going to have on the state of Minnesota. So while this community might say, you know what, I can't afford another $1,000 a year for a referendum. Maybe some can. I know there are plenty of people. I myself, I was a single parent. $1,000 a year made a big difference. It might mean the difference between my kids being able to go to summer camp, or buying shoes for my kids, or keeping a roof over over their heads. But at the end of the day, if Chair Joachim's bill went to the tax committee, if they approved it, it would affect all of your taxes. It would affect my taxes, it would affect all of our taxes. So we can't get away from contributing towards the education of our students, no matter what we do. If that bill had passed, your taxes would go up. And why isn't the tax, it's not a problem and it gets to taxes and they don't hear it? The chair has made a promise that she's not gonna raise taxes. So it has to be neutralized somewhere. So wherever, if you're gonna raise taxes over here, you have to find somewhere else to cover those taxes. It's not that easy, but it's something that we will continue to work on.
I think we'll have Dr. Mueller speak, and then we are going to wrap it up, because I know that I promised an hour, and our kids and our teachers and parents too. I promised you an hour, so we're already at an hour and a half. So Dr. Mueller, if you want to make some final remarks.
Thank you so much, and I would appreciate if there is someone who needs to have a question answered, that we will definitely, I will definitely stay and answer whatever you need. Representative Dr. Patricia Mueller, I never use that full title because it feels weird, but I was in the classroom for almost 20 years as well. I'm from Austin, Minnesota. Come on down and have some Spam, it's wonderful. So thank you. Education is the reason why I got into the legislature as well. And I have made a commitment to my school districts to visit them at least twice a calendar year. And I just finished, because December got crazy, I just finished my last tour of my schools. The frustrations that you hear, maybe not with equalization, but the frustrations that I'm hearing tonight, we're hearing all over the state. Our schools are on the struggle bus for real. I was a high school, middle school teacher. Sorry, it happens. The language comes out. And so it is a hard road right now. And some of it is because we don't always do a very good job of explaining how our schools are funded. And we hear over and over again how complex it is. We hear that once, formula can't fix all of it. Okay, fine. But we have an opportunity to make sure that when we provide funding, that funding is flexible and focused. And what I mean by that is you who live in this community have the option to elect school board members. And you do that conscientiously. You do that because they are accountable to you, and they will then decide how that money is spent that they get from the legislature. And it is my goal to honor those positions. And so when we hear about mandates, funded or unfunded, it takes away the authority that you have given to your local school board. And I believe that is something that could drastically change how your money is spent, how your funds are allocated at each of the districts, because each district is different. One of the questions, and I will promise I'll be done, my master's and doctorate is in literacy, and so the READ Act is something very close to my heart. And Senator Kunish, I was in the conference committee when you guys passed the READ Act, and it was fantastic, and it was great. 100% underfunded. And I understand that we were trying to give a lot of money to a lot of different places and reconcile things that happened from COVID and all of those things. Everyone understands that. I am excited to see how we can work together to make sure that that bill becomes something that actually impacts our students and our teachers. And it starts not only from making sure we have great curriculum in our classrooms, that we have great training for our teachers, but that we then go back and we look at our teaching preparatory programs and we hold them accountable to make sure they are training our teachers in the science of reading. Because that is what is going to come out of our colleges, and then our principals and superintendents don't have to spend extra time and money to retrain teachers. And it's not that we're looking at our teachers and saying, how dare you? Our teachers were told this is how you should teach reading, and it's not. And so they were the victims of this as well. And so making sure that we go back and we train them and that we affirm that they are doing the best that they can, but when we know better, we do better, and we're able to do that both in our classrooms and in our colleges, and so that's something that's really important to me as well.
Thank you, Dr. Mueller. We are big fans of the READ Act here at STMA. We would just like a little bit more funding for that. But big fans as the former 15-year curriculum director for the district. I want to thank our legislators for joining us tonight. As one of our, I believe it was Representative Hudson said, I've been doing this for a long time, traveling to Buffalo, traveling to other districts for forums, and we usually get a few local legislators who really just give us information about what they cannot do. My heart is swelling tonight with pride for these legislators coming near and far to talk about kids, to talk about how we can do better because we know better, to quote Dr. Mueller. We can do better for our kids. So thank you, legislators. We look forward to partnering with you and advocating for our kids when the session starts on February 12th. To our speakers, thank you. I know it's getting late. I know you have homework to do. To our seniors, our teachers have lots to do, and parents, thank you for coming out because when we say we put kids first in this district, it's not a slogan, it's not a motto. We truly do. And I've got goosebumps standing up in front of you right now thinking about the possibilities and the opportunities that are in front of us that we can partner together to support our kids and our staff members. So thank you for coming out this evening. Their next steps include having your voice be heard. You heard our legislators, they talked about voice. Years ago, we wouldn't have got all of these legislators to come out in support of our kids, and we did because it's you, all of you, coming together and having your voice be heard at the Capitol and in St. Paul. So please stay engaged and continue to advocate. You had a number of QR code when you came in, and if you didn't, you can scan it in the back. There's a funding video, a copy of this presentation, and some our legislative web pages on there too. Please stay engaged. And if you want to come in and have coffee with me, I would welcome that. Nights, weekends, I will meet and explain and help. We can't do this alone. So please come and help us to help our kids. So I hope you have a good evening, drive safe, and let's advocate together. Thanks, everyone.